Thank you, Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise in opposition to this MPI and to bring some sense back to this chamber. That this House, and the member for Evelyn has moved this motion, of course, and I acknowledge that and I respect that this House condemns the government for the cost of living and our approach to economic management, the cost of housing, renting, energy and groceries, our goal to build 800,000 new homes over the next decade, and for supposedly failing to implement meaningful measures to ease the cost of living pressures for Victorians. And I rise, Speaker, on this MPI not because I agree with it, but quite the opposite, quite the contrary, of course. But you would have thought, number one, with a federal election currently underway and a federal Liberal opposition out there campaigning to secure the support of Victorians and Australians more broadly, that this Liberal opposition will be working as hard as they can to get good quality commitments for Victorians from their federal colleagues, instead of going after this state Labor government, which has been doing day in and day out, delivering real action on the cost of living. So that's point number one. No mention of the federal Liberal inaction for over a decade here. Point number two, it's a motion that really alludes to the Liberals' intention, if they were to get in government at a federal or even definitely a state level, to cut, close and burn public-facing services. Make no mistakes, when the Liberals cut, Victorians will pay the price, Speaker. And number three, if the opposition had actually been paying attention, I actually moved the inverse of this motion exactly 2 weeks ago. And that's actually the main reason why I'm speaking on this matter now, Speaker. On the 5th of March, I moved an MPI that stated, and like I said at the time, if you look at the almanac at the time of Back to the Future, it will be in there. It will be in there. It will be in there.
Member for Pascoe Vale.
It will be in there, Speaker.
Not use props in the chamber.
That this House notes that the Allan Labor government is helping working families with the cost of living by making much-needed investments in health, in education, housing and in transport. And you know what's interesting about this motion, actually, Speaker, that the member for Evelyn has intentionally left out the words education, health and transport in her motion. And that's because we know the Liberals do not believe in investing in health, education and transport. They never have, they never will, they only know how to cut health, education and transport. But it's, there's a couple of other words I can use to describe this motion as well, Speaker. The first is it's actually misleading. It's misleading about the real actions of what us as a Victorian Labor government have actually been doing to support people with the cost of living. And there's a definition that comes to mind when we go to misleading, and I've got the dictionary here as well, acting Speaker. My apologies, Speaker.
Order, Speaker, and I'd ask you not to use props in the chamber, member for Pascoe Vale, dictionary or not. You have a point of order, member for Nepean.
Speaker, the member for Pascoe Vale, I believe, is going to defy your ruling, and he seems to have a prop located on his bench there.
I've ruled on that matter. Member for Pascoe Vale.
Thank you, Speaker, and I appreciate your guidance. I was literally picking up this dictionary to quote from the dictionary, and I appreciate the member for Nepean's enthusiasm, and I'll get to him in a moment too. But the motion is misleading because it doesn't actually accurately reflect what this Victorian Labor government has been doing to support Victorians with the cost of living. And the definition of misleading is, and I quote, to give the wrong idea or the wrong impression. And we know the Liberal opposition leader in particular has a good habit, he's got a good habit of misleading his own party room. He didn't tell them. We're talking about cost of living here. This is an opposition leader that just went on a cruise ship holiday, and misled his party room about whether he was on a holiday or not. That's point number one.
Member for Pascoe Vale will resume his seat. A point of order, member for Brighton.
Speaker, if the member hasn't got the capacity to speak on relevance, if the member hasn't got the capacity, I just said, Speaker, on relevance, if the Speaker hasn't got the capacity to speak on the motion, perhaps he can sit down.
I'd ask you not to make a statement when you raise a point of order. Member for Pascoe Vale, stick to the matter of public importance.
Thank you, Speaker, and I certainly believe I am sticking to it. I'm specifically going to the very essence of the motion and why I believe it is very much misleading and inaccurate on many levels indeed. There's quite a few other ways I can describe the motion as well, but one of the ways, just to skip along the way here, is to describe it as a baccalà of a motion. And in Italian we have a word called baccalà, which describes quite a few things. But it is, I quote, an Italian fish that's enjoyed an extreme popularity amongst much of the Mediterranean. But it's also used to describe someone who can be considered a salted codfish, or someone who's good for not much. And that's what this motion really is. But when you look at the definition, there's also a photo of who is a bacala.
I will sit you down if you use another prop. I will not allow you to defy my rulings. This is the third time I have warned you, member for Pascoe Vale. Point of order, member for Brighton.
Different point of order, Speaker. Referring to the member for Evelyn in that way is extremely unparliamentary. Unparliamentary.
What is your point of order?
I just said referring to the member for Evelyn in a completely
I'd ask you to
way.
be mindful of not referring to members of parliament in a disrespectful manner. Order. Member for Nepean. Member for Nepean, would you like to leave the chamber? You can leave the chamber for half an hour. Member for Pascoe Vale.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll certainly be following your ruling. And to clarify, it wasn't about the member for Evelyn, it was about the member for Nepean. I do just acknowledge that. But in all honesty, all jokes aside here, I mean, the reality is that every single motion we as a government have sought to move and progress in this chamber when it comes to cost of living for young people, for families, for workers, for older people, you name it, Speaker, the opposition have actively opposed and campaigned against and talked down every single motion. What the member for Evelyn didn't get up and talk about was whether or not the Liberal opposition state government would support the ongoing retention of the $400 school saving bonus. To date, that's saved $150 million in Victorian families' pockets on new uniforms, books, excursions and the like. There's been no commitment from the Liberal opposition on whether or not they would maintain that, let alone whether they would have committed to that originally. There's been no commitment from the opposition about whether they'd retain free kinder, which is saving $2,600 per child per family of 3 and 4-year-olds. That would be on the chopping block. That would be on the cutting block, dare I say. There's no commitment. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, member for Evelyn. We haven't heard the Liberal...
Member for Pascoe Vale, through the chair. Member for Evelyn will cease interjecting. Member for Pascoe Vale.
There's the $200 kids sports saving active vouchers bonus as well, helping so many families in local sporting clubs with uniforms, boots, shin pads and the like, and participating in local sport. Again, you never would have heard that announcement from a Liberal government. Free school breakfast program. We know they cut the Fresh Fruit Friday program. Are they going to retain, if they get elected, the school breakfast program? Free dental in schools program. Free to study teaching. Free TAFE courses, over 80 TAFE courses. Free to study nursing. Free LMP plates. The urgent care clinics. We know the federal Liberal government over a decade decimated Medicare and bulk billing. And we know the pressure, as the Minister for Health spoke about in question time today, spoke about how that has placed increasing pressure, record pressure on Victorian hospital emergency departments. We've opened up urgent care clinics. Would a Victorian Liberal government maintain and grow and expand those urgent care clinics? Again, dare I say not. The motion talks about energy. We've introduced the Victorian default energy offer, which is keeping wholesale and retail prices in Victoria low for families and low for businesses. The solar homes program, hot water, solar panel, battery rebates and loans. This whole investment we've been making through the Minister for Energy and Environment is about providing households with the cheapest form of renewable energy. Again, the Liberals have not, as far as I'm aware, come out to match that ongoing commitment. The council rate cap. We introduced the council rate cap, and this year it's at 2.75% in 24-25. And we know some Greens councils in particular want to abolish that rate cap, which will work to obviously ensure does not occur. Because we know, of course, Speaker, that this motion really does not belong in the chamber of this parliament, to be frank. It belongs on comedy reality shows. And it takes me back to an old episode of Cianflone where Cosmo Kramer actually went at the back of the NBC studios and he found the old Merv Griffin, the Merv Griffin set. And he brought that up to his apartment and invited his friends Jerry, Newman, who else was there, as George Costanza, to talk about nothing. And that's what this motion is about. It's basically a Liberal Party branch meeting motion where you've got Newman, the member for Brighton and others, talking in an echo chamber about what they're going to cut and what they're going to close. Because whether it's on economic management, housing, renting, energy, the cost of living, or generally, we are taking all the action needed to make life more affordable and accessible. And let's go to some of the points that the member for Evelyn spoke about in terms of our economic management. She's totally disregarded the geopolitical external factors, inflationary pressures that have happened, a once-in-a-100-year global pandemic that have played major roles in terms of the current state of the international national economy in particular. 13 interest rate rises by the Reserve Bank, which, mind you, inflation was growing at record rates, not under the Labor federal government, it was a Scott Morrison Liberal federal government where inflation was out of control. 13 times in a row, and the rate cut happened under the federal Labor government. So talk about economic management, talk about the facts, because the facts, the Liberals don't like the facts to get in the good way of a fake Liberal narrative. And I take the House to point 1 of the motion in relation to economic management. Because the fact is, the Victorian Government's mid-year financial report, ABS figures show that Victoria's economy, labour market and levels of business investment continue to drive national leading growth. Almost 900,000 new jobs created since 2014. Record low unemployment. Gross state product has increased by 1.5% in 23-24. The economy, Speaker, is now 11.5% larger than prior to the pandemic. Our economy has grown by over 9% in the last 2 years, alone that's according to the Deloitte report. Business investment, the member for Evelyn doesn't want to refer to this fact, but business investment in this state has grown by 30% since 2020 to 21, higher than any other state and reaching record high share of overall economic activity. Business investment also has grown by 3.7% over the last year to December 24, compared to negative 0.1 nationally. So nationally is going backwards. We're going forwards in record levels. That's a fact. 108,000 businesses have opened the doors in Victoria since June 2020, an increase of 17% new businesses in Victoria, the largest growth of any state, Speaker. And let's talk about business. We've released the Economic Growth Statement, which is all about backing businesses, cutting red tape and building the new skills that businesses are asking for through that free TAFE, which the Liberals would never have delivered and won't maintain if they ever got in. The Economic Growth Statement, of course, it contains those things that business told us they wanted, like streamlining liquor licensing, which will save $7,000 for hospitality businesses and allow them to open up to 6 months earlier. It'll also look at sensible other ways to cut red tape and save money for businesses and time for small businesses. Small Business Victoria and the Minister for Small Businesses are doing a sensational job in progressing much of these and other reforms. We've committed to halve the number of business regulators by 2030, saving small business up to $500 million over 5 years by decreasing bureaucracy and other costs. We've also worked on a major program of tax reform, including increasing the payroll tax threshold, abolishing business insurance duties, commercial and industrial stamp duty reforms, which I remember the Liberals spoke against in this chamber, basically. We listened and made those payroll taxes fairer for business because payroll tax threshold is now of $700,000 we knew was too low. And to better support small businesses across our state, from July 1, 2024, we have raised the threshold to $900,000 tax-free threshold, with a further $1 million from July 1, 2025. And the reforms will save 26,000 Victorian businesses up to $14,550 per year, and around 6,000 of those businesses will stop paying payroll tax altogether. And in relation to our expenditure, which the motion also talks about as well, we're creating those jobs. We're building that infrastructure through kinder, schools, hospitals, community facilities, social services. $12.8 billion in the mid-year budget update towards infrastructure, which is about Metro Rail Tunnel, level crossings, North East links, and locally my school community, $18 million new rebuild of Pascoe Vale Primary School, $17.8 million Coburg Technology Hub, $14.5 million John Falconer Secondary College, $11 million Pascoe Vale Girls College, $10 million Glenroy College, and much, much more. The money is going to things that we need and should have been done, and we continue to deliver going forward. But it's also about the population. If things are so dire as the opposition make us to believe, why do people want to keep moving to Victoria in record droves? Why? They're moving to Victoria in record droves. Our population is growing at the fastest rate in the nation. 130,000 more people in the last 12 months, 2% growth, compared to New South Wales poultry, 1.3% growth. But it's also the major events. 2 million people attended Victorian major events, international, interstate, intrastate visitors. Record crowds at the grand final, 200,000 people at the Evelyn Air Show. Speaker, if the state was in such dire situation as the Liberals are claiming, why are more people moving here? Why are more people investing here? Why are more jobs being created here? Why are more businesses opening here? Victoria is the best state in the nation to live.
Order.